This lesson, for the most part, is a review exercise, primarily using the pen tool to create a selection of the two people in the foreground here, and then applying that selection to create two different masks. One again to give the illusion of text running behind the subject up here, as well as creating this softened yellow tint over the background. If I show you the original file, which I have open over here, it comes with this dark green background, and I just wanted to isolate and distinguish the figures a bit more by softening that up and using a translucent gradation basically to do that. So let me go back to my finished file and explain how I built that, and then I'll actually create some of these things for you on the new file. As you can see here, I've got 4 layers created. I'll turn them off one at a time. There's 2 different text layers, and I'll turn off the background layer, which is that gradient that you see running from yellow to light yellow. And you can see a lot of transparency here. I'm actually going to also turn off the mask layer on this layer here. So let me hit my Shift key to turn that off. Shift, and you see the red X running through the mask, and the mask is no longer being applied. So this is the original image that we're going to start with. Now if I go over to my paths, I already created a path using the pen tool. If I zoom up here, I can go to my selection tools and just highlight that for you. You can see I painstakingly took the time to already draw this. Now if you need to see how to create a path again using the pen tool and the other vector tools, go to the previous lesson on pen tools. But I've already created this previously to save some time in the demonstration. You will notice that it runs all the way around, and at the bottom it is connected with a horizontal line to close the path. Okay, let me just zoom out on this again. Now I will select in the empty area here to hide the visibility of that path, and we'll go back to my layers. Now that I've shown you all of the different elements, I think it's time to build this. I'm just going to turn this back on though, so Shift key on the mask, which reapplies it, and just using some text. And the one, I guess, new thing that we've added in this demonstration is that on this first name text layer, I've actually added a layer style, which is called drop shadow. Okay, so let's go over to the other file now and start to create this. Again, I would have started by creating a selection using my pen tool, so I will start one just to get you going here. I'm going to zoom in because there's a lot of detail here. I'll go over to my paths palette. You can see I already have one created, but I'll create a new one, or I'll start to create a new one here. So I'll go to my pen tool, and let's just say I can randomly start anywhere. I'll just start over here near the phaser gun and start to draw lines. So I'm clicking and dragging to create my curves. And if I wanted to go and modify something, it'd be Control key on the PC, Command key on the Mac to move, grab anything here, make an adjustment. Again, that turns it into the selection tool. And when I let go, it's back to the pen tool. Straight lines are single clicks. Curved lines are click and drag. And so on and so forth. And ultimately go all the way around and then close the path by returning to that original anchor point. Okay, and you can see I have a work path here. Once it's done, again you double click on it. I'm just going to call this path 2 and say OK, just for the sake of demonstrating how to save that. And if I don't want to see the path, I can just click in an empty area and it does disappear off of my screen. Okay, so let me go back to my layers. I'll go back to my selection tool. I'm going to resize, Control minus, or I can go Control 1 to go actual size. And I'll start by turning this into a regular layer. You can see right now that it's a background layer. So I'm going to double click on that icon and I'll just call it Star Trek. And click OK. And now I will apply that mask or that path as a selection and ultimately create a mask for the layer. So let's do that. Let's go to our paths. I'll go to the one I called Trekkers, then go to the sub pull down menu and choose Make Selection. I'm going to go with 0 pixel feather radius, anti-alias, click OK. Go back to my layers. Once that selection is established, all I need to do to create a mask based on that selection is to go down to my mask tool here, add layer mask, and click it. And you can see it manifest itself over here in the layers, and you can see the result over here on the screen. And I did take careful time to make sure it was a fairly accurate line to go around it. If I was not perfectly happy with it, I could zoom up and again click on my mask layer. Using my brush tool, I could start to go around making changes. Now this is going to be exaggerated, but you can see here if I wanted to add something, I can always go and modify it. I'm going to undo that, of course, and get back to the task at hand. What I want to do now, I'm going to zoom out, is create that background layer, if you will, of the gradient that went from dark yellow to light yellow. Okay, now I'm going to create the gradient. I'm going to just click back on the main layer icon here versus the mask. And I'm going to create a new layer. I'll actually name it right away. Double click on the name, call it gradient. I will drag it behind the Star Trek layer. And now I'll establish 2 colors for my gradient. So my foreground color, I'll click on it. I'll pick a nice warm yellow. And then for my background layer, I'll click on that. And again, a nice warm yellow, but a much lighter version of it. There we go. Then off to my gradient tool, which if you don't see it, it's underneath the bucket. And I'll start the ramp, I don't know, about 1/10 of the way down, so it'll be solid down till here. I will also hold my shift key down to constrain it as a vertical ramp and drag pretty well right to the bottom. Now actually let me redo that because I noticed, I'm going to undo, that my gradient was set to go to transparent. In this case I'm actually going to set it to go to the second color, so I'll pick that first box, foreground to background color. There we go. Hit my enter key. I also notice my opacity is set to 60. That must be what it was set at the last time I used it. I'm going to set that back up to 100%. I can hit my return key. And as we say, one more time with feeling. So I'm going to start it right about here at the top, hold my shift key down, drag it almost all the way to the bottom. And there is my solid colored gradient in the background. Now I'm going to go back up to my Star Trek layer and I'm going to select the mask. If your properties window is not open, make sure you click it open over here. And if you need to look for it under window, it would be window properties. What I want to do is I want to take some of the opacity out of that mask so that it will actually show some of the photograph, some of the background that it's in the photograph. So I can go down to density under my mask properties, move my slider down, and you can see it's starting to show. So I'll just go down to something that looks reasonable to yourself. I'm going to go with 40% on this one. That looks pretty good. It basically tones down the background and gives it some colorization. And you'll notice my mask icon has turned gray here. And I'm going to save this file. Save as. I'll call it Trekker Start 2. And continue on. Really, the heavy lifting was all in the pen tool selection in creating that pathway. But I'm going to create 2 more layers, 2 more text layers, one with the first name at the top, and I'll apply a layer mask of a drop shadow to that. So let me go to my text tool. And type in my name. I'm going to type it all in uppercase. I'm going to select all, center that, change it to impact, because impact is a nice bold font. There we are. And increase its size. Now if I'm not happy with that, I can just go to my selection tool and go Command T, Control T on the PC, and just make that larger. I want to constrain it, so I'm holding my Shift key down. And if you want to constrain and increase the size from its center point, you not only hold the Shift key down, but you also hold the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac. And then I can grab it and reposition it. And I'm actually going to reduce it a bit, so Shift, Alt, and there we go. And when I'm happy with it, I hit my return key. Now, since I already created a mask, I can just go in and select that mask, or make the selection of that mask. Or I could have gone back to my path, actually, and created a selection based on that. Maybe I'll do it that way. Path, highlight the path, make selection, click my layers, and just add a layer mask to that text layer. So with the selection currently highlighted, with that layer selected, go down to Add Layer Mask. Now it's exactly the opposite of what I want. So all I need to do is go to my layer mask, hit my Alt key, and I'm going to do what's known as an invert selection. I'm just going to go Control I, which inverts the colors. Now if I click on my Alt key again on the layer icon of the mask, it brings it back. I'll click on the text, half of that, and there I have masked text. Gives the illusion that it's running in between, behind the head, but in fact it's sitting on top with a mask cutting out the appropriate sections. Now I'm going to create a little layer effect on here. Just highlight that layer once again. I can either do it from the bottom here, Effects, or I can go to Layer Style, Drop Shadow. Then I get a dialog box, and I can change the opacity, the blend mode. Multiply is usually the best for drop shadow. The color, I'll leave it at black. The angle, I can change the direction of where the light's coming from. I actually do like it coming from upper left. And the size and the distance, of course. So it's fairly exaggerated. And we click OK when we're happy with it. And one last detail, I'm just going to get you to type in your last name very small directly below here. So using the text tool, I'm going to type flush. Oh, you know what? I got so close to that text that it actually highlighted the text. I'm just going to click my move tool to deselect. And maybe I'll just select a bit lower and then move it. Okay. And we'll just type in my last name. And it's quite a bit too big. So I'm just going to select all. I'm going to make it flush left. And I'll bring the point size down. I'll try 24. It's a bit small maybe, so I'll try 36. And then go to my move tool. Position that. I'm just going to change the color on my text here. So I'm going to double click on the text layer. Go to my color chip at the top. And I'll just darken it, I guess. And I'll deselect, go to my move tool. And if I need to fine tune it with the move tool, I'll just position it. And save the file. So this is what I want you to create for me today. Based on a selection using the pen tool, you're going to isolate the two figures, create a mask, and then when you go to the mask, highlight the mask. And in your properties, you're going to lower the density so that it allows some of that image to show through and project onto the gradated backdrop, which is directly below it as a gradient. Then you're going to mask the text and you may need to invert your selection. Again, just to review, Alt key down shows me the actual mask, and I can do work on it directly. Then Alt click brings me back to my visibility, and I'll just click on the text there. Then I added a layer effect, which in this case was a drop shadow, and then one more layer with my last name and repositioned it. So this is your exercise for today.